Welcome back to the channel. This is the video you've all been asking for. We're glad you hang around. Our subscribers are growing, our comments are growing. This is why this video is what it is. This is the core model test. We've tested every core model driver under our standard parameter. It's what makes us the most trusted YouTube channel out there, the most trusted fitting company out there, and this is a two-part video. First part of the video, we're going to run through the zero face path angle of attack 95 mile an hour test. The second part of the video, we've made our robot hit the most average golf swing we can imagine.
Pretty much standard golfer, yeah.
Right, standard golfer. 95 mile an hour again, around 100. You're going to hit down on it a little bit, 2 degrees, hit left about 4 degrees, and leave the face open to the path a couple.
So 2 degrees closed, 2 degrees open to the face, yeah.
And little fades out there. And we actually haven't done this test until this point.
No, we don't have any idea what's going to happen here.
We're going to do it live on camera. We're going to hit a shot with each club. We're going to map it so you'll see the ball flight of each club. So hang in there for that. So first things first, core models 2025. We're going to show 6 on the screen. There's a 7th that we only just tested today.
Right.
Mark, what is the best core model driver?
You know, that's a really hard decision, right? It depends on the person, right? So everybody's looking at different things. All the drivers are pretty good these days. I mean, I must admit, you know, I'm looking through all this data and stuff, and it's not really a bad driver this year we tested. So the question is, which is the best one? That depends. That's why you have to get fitted, right? Now, for me personally, I looked at all this data and I'm like, wow, they're all pretty good. But, you know, I'm looking for, you know, a CG that's not too deep, because I have a trouble squaring it up, and I tend to, you know, fade it a little bit, and I'm trying to draw it. So if the CG gets real deep, that doesn't help me. And also the tilt axis, right? The draw biased ones. I don't want anything that's too heavily fade biased, because I'm just fighting it all day. So I kind of looked through all these numbers and stuff, and the kind of ones that kind of stood out to me, probably the Callaway. Certainly it's, you know, a little draw bias to begin with. It can even be adjusted a little more, so that's not a problem. You know, that's also low spin. I hit it really high, so I just as soon have a low spin driver. Don't need to get it up in the air. You know, obviously the ping is interesting to me. Now it's got kind of a Jeep CG, which I think would be difficult, but it does have the ability to move the adjustment to the heel, which actually bring that CG a little forward, make it a little easier to turn over. So that's, again, the lower spin driver that's worth trying. It's a little fade bias, but not much, and so see how much that weight makes a difference. And the other one is the Taylormade. I mean, it looks great too. I love the look of the Taylormade. But again, it's a little bit neutral. It's not fade biased. It's got a little bit deeper CG than maybe I like, but you know, it looks good and it's super forgiving. It's, you know, way up there in the MOI. So I picked like 3 that are relatively high MOI and not too fade biased.
Right.
That's for me. You know, if somebody else spins it not enough or hits down on it, then that's a different driver.
So this is why we've done this test at 95 miles an hour. It happens to be about
which is great for me, because it's really good data for me to look at.
And we can kind of turn this up and down. Our fitters have some access to higher speed data, but we want you to look at this sheet and think, what do you need for your game? And hopefully Mark's explanation of what he's picked for his game makes sense to you. Forward CG, lower spin characteristic, and something that has a left tilt bias that suits your game.
That's for me, yep.
And if you want the opposite end of that, I'm not going to tell you what it is. Have a look through the numbers, spend the time, comment, tell us below which driver out of these looks like is the one for you, or the 2 for you, or the 3 for you. And then the goal is to get into a fitting place, a worldwide golf retail location, or a cool clubs, and test these products, see what you like the look of, feel of, sound of, all that kind of stuff, and find out which one works best. I've got a few other call-outs here that we can touch on that I've noted down off camera. Mark hasn't even seen them yet, so and you can find this out by looking at this data yourself. But essentially, the highest YY MOI out of the batch, that's heel-to-toe forgiveness, is the G440, followed pretty tightly by the Callaway Elyte and the Taylormade. So they are, in theory, and this is to help you understand which driver, more stable from left to right off-center hits.
Yep. Absolutely. And you know, it's one of the reasons, one of the things I looked at, you know, especially for this driver. I mean, I potentially could pay one of the smaller drivers, hit it more or less in the center, but you know, if I want to try something that's, you know, forgiving, so I can swing harder, maybe make the shaft longer and lighter, well, why not? Right?
Yep. Well, on the opposite end of that scale, we've got the lowest YY MOI drivers, and that means that the player is able to possibly work the ball more.
Absolutely.
Think about it like that.
Face easier, yeah.
So that's got the Titleist GT, the SRIXON ZXi, and the one that you can't see on screen here, and we're going to flash that up now, is the Wilson Dynapower Carbon. That there has got a 4875 YY MOI. So that's down in those bottom 3. The one that Mark picked up in terms of spin, it didn't have a lot of tilt. That Wilson is, ironically, and this leads to my next point, the lowest spin driver of the core models, if we're just looking at RPMs on their own.
Yeah, I didn't really look at this one in detail, but yeah, this kind of fits me a little bit too. I mean, maybe not quite as forgiving, but it's certainly a little draw bias and it's low spin, so yeah.
It's in the mix, right?
Yeah, just don't think of Wilson initially, but hey, why not?
Well, it and the Callaway Elyte were the lowest spin by a margin. You know, 204 spin launch and 206 spin launch. They're really, really close to each other. If we flick back to the highest spin products, and that's spin launch or spin, we've got the GT2 and the Cobra X. And it's really funny thinking about the Cobra X. I just interviewed Ricky Fowler and Gary Woodland out of the Cobra. They both traded from the LS model to the X model because they want a little more stability. They want a little more spin and control of the golf ball. So it's interesting to see tour players. We saw Rory do that with the QI10 LS going to the core
especially
model.
those guys though. They're really not looking for distance as much. So it's both guys from Gary Woodland has miles. So you know,
Fair
not
point.
as big a deal. You know, I have a different concept at 95 miles an hour than they do. So anyway.
Well, the juxtaposition of that last comment as well is lowest launching driver is the GT2, but it's also one of the highest spin drivers.
Yeah.
So the ball flight ends up in kind of a mid space, but it starts a little lower than the others.
Right, and they've got obviously two below that. They can go to the 3 at a lower spin, which is probably what I would try in the Titleist line.
Yep.
I played that for a while. It's a great driver. And then obviously they got the 4, which is super low spin.
Yep.
One of the lowest spinning drivers we said. So there's a couple others below that.
Yep. And then we go to the other highest launching driver, which is the SRIXON ZXi. It's a call out again. It kind of sits under those big 4 guys' names.
Right.
But this is the reason why we're telling you this information. You might need launch. Well, if you need launch, ZXi are going to be great contenders in that space. If we're talking about left to right bias, Mark touched on this. The Callaway Elyte is the strongest left bias. It's not a hook driver by any sense. It's just going to finish more left than the others.
Right.
In the same vein, if you struggle with the left and you want to see more right side of the fairway, SRIXON ZXi again.
Yeah. And they've done pretty well on tour with that driver for, you know, a smaller company, especially in drivers, you know, done very well with irons, but you know, they've got quite a few people in play.
Okay. And then CG depth, you touched on this one as well.
Right.
CG depth is kind of linked to MOI, probably tilt, launch, spin. It's like this factor that's
well, that's the thing too. If you look at all these numbers we got up on the screen here, you know, the reason I'm looking at those couples because the other ones are kind of relatable to the other ones. So if you look at, you know, the tilt axis, what goes into that, CG depth affects that. You know, to some extent, and obviously lying affects that.
Right.
So that's kind of the net of it, what the tilt axis is, you know, at the end of the day. So it's easier to just look at that one rather than try to worry about all the other little ones. Right, yeah, exactly. So,
and the last piece on that is the G440, by the way, is the furthest back, deepest CG. Yeah. Right. Then the opposite end of that scale is the GT2. And I think that's really interesting because Titleist, you know, the whole MOI 10K story came out last year. Right. Titleist went the other way with MOI. The net result of MOI is CG moving up. So Titleist are kind of saying, hey, you know, MOI isn't the biggest thing for us. This is our GT2 model. This is our for every man. Right. And we don't want it to be all the way back. It's the furthest forward CG of every core model.
Some argument for that too. You get, you know, the super big heads that you're trying to give to high handicap golfers, and a lot of them slice it. So it's kind of a trade-off there, you know.
Well, it keeps the loft in the more neutral spot. You know, that it's not tilting back or holding too far forward. It doesn't do anything crazy in terms of launch and spin. It's really giving the best ball speed, most consistent for what the head is supposed to do. All of this is to help educate you on buying a driver. We hope all this data really does matter.
Pick out the ones that you're looking for that are important to you, and then look at the numbers. Yeah.
And tell us. You know, we want your feedback here. We want your feedback on the content because we're trying to evolve this channel and be the most trusted people on YouTube about golf equipment reviews. We want you to come to us because you're going to get an honest answer, the real answer, not an opinion. That's number one.
No, the robot doesn't know who's hitting it, so and we just show you the numbers we get.
And number two is comment and tell us which driver you're going to pick and why. I think that might be a fun thing. Let people chime in on why they're going to pick what they pick and why you might not do it. It's just a fun space to have this conversation. Stick around. We are about to go and hit the average man's golf swing, average female golf swing on the robot, hit the fade with each and every model that you've seen tested here and see what they do.
This will be kind of fun because I don't know what's going to happen.
Me neither. Let's do it. So we're going to kick off with the Wilson Dynapower Carbon, their core model, purely because it was in the robot. We literally just finished testing it.
Right, so ready to go.
Ready to go. And we've got your favorite robot testing engineer in the back here, Glen. We know you love him. Put the comments, love for Glen. He doesn't actually speak, by the way. It's mute. All right, Glen, let's do it. So the Wilson was one of the more forward CG, lower spinning clubs out there. and it still had a fade.
Yeah.
And let's see what the numbers. We're going to kind of try and keep it scientific. We're trying to keep the path around -4 and the face around 2. And we got the path at 4 degrees, 4.3, and the face bang on 2. And then look at that little fade there. We have no reference point right now.
Right. I don't know how this does compare to the other ones, but you know, it didn't really fade a lot.
It didn't actually.
You know?
It stayed down that left side. So offline, 8.7 yards left of our center line. That's an interesting metric to keep a hold of.
Well, what's interesting about that is actually you're 4 degrees outside in, right?
Yep.
With a 2 degree open. So you're 2 degrees open to the path.
Right.
So you expect to see a little more cut than that.
Right.
But it went pretty damn straight.
Pretty straight.
So
Carry
see what
217.
the other ones do.
Right, we're going to use 10.5 degree. The only one that gets maybe a disadvantage of this is the Titleist because it starts at 10 degree. That's its neutral location.
Right.
So that's obviously going to come out probably a little flatter.
Yeah, and you really can't look at distance numbers on this, right? Because it's, you know, it's marrying the launch and spin and all that stuff. So
yeah. Okay, well, we're going to go in alphabetical order from here. Next up is the Callaway Elyte core model. Okay, time for the Callaway Elyte. This is one of your picks.
yeah, it's kind of interesting to see what this one does.
Yep. Not
I
that
don't get
you
4
fade.
degrees outside in very often, but it's more like leaving the face open. But we'll see.
All right, let's do it, Glenn. Interesting, that 10.5 degrees at this speed, when you hit down on it a couple,
Yeah,
it really
definitely
doesn't launch.
It doesn't launch. No, actually, most of them we've seen that. I actually saw in the last one as well.
Right.
You hit down on it. You're basically moving it back in your stance a little bit to get that with a robot arc without twisting the hips and everything. So that's why.
So this one did launch a bit higher. Okay, good.
Yep.
9.5, and that gives it a little advantage in that carry. Gave it a little more spin on this one too.
Yep.
And then we saw 2.7 yards left. So this is a weird way to look at it, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you want to be more near the center, or do you want it to be more down the left so it's not fading as much?
I'd rather be in the center, obviously, you know, but so maybe this is a good one to try.
This is a good one to try.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Next up on the list, alphabetical order, we have got the Cobra X core model. Let's do it. Cobra X. This is the one that Gary and Ricky put in play in the last tournament.
You would not have thought the you know, the core models for those guys, but like I said, they get lots of speed, swing hard, so make it forgiving, and a little more spin is probably not a bad thing for them. So.
Well, let's see what it does under this golf swing. Not quite the same.
No, not.
So we saw this one at one of the higher spins. It wasn't quite the highest. GT was the highest, so maybe that'll keep it in the air and make it move. And this will be an interesting one for those people who think spin's a problem.
Pretty straight, a little bit of fade. I'm surprised how little slice there is really on this for that.
Well, the tilt axis on this on a neutral swing was plus 1.9.
Right.
And that, I mean, that is in the middle of the pack, I think. Let's have a look at the table, Glenn, real quick, and just so we can compare some spins. I think that is the highest spin one out of the bunch, which is what we did see on the...
Right.
Yep, it's the highest spin one by margin over Callaway. Right in the middle of the pack for launch, not really much
Didn't
to
have
talk
that
about
much
there.
spin axis to the right, though. It didn't fade all that much, so that's interesting.
It didn't. Interesting. So it and the
almost identical, right?
The Wilson were pretty much on the same line. It flew higher than the Wilson, so it clipped it for a little bit of flight. You can see that the red's a little lower there than the black. Okay.
Interesting.
All right. Well, we're finding this out live.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised it's not fading more.
Me
right?
too.
You
Me
know?
too. Well,
2 degrees is not that bad. So I guess we'll have to start try like 8 degrees outside in and 4 degrees close.
I guess that's more like most of the normal golfers.
Yeah, that's the higher handicap.
That's
one.
how Glenn
Hey,
swings it.
Next time.
Okay, next up is the Ping G440. Let's do it.
All right, see what happens with that one.
G440, the furthest back CG, one of my favorite sounding drivers of the year.
Yeah, it does sound pretty good.
Yep.
Ping has kind of struggled with that occasionally, but this one sounds good. Solid. Yep.
Well, this is really who I think Ping have aimed this model at, right? It's for the most
Yep.
a little
It's
baby
high
cut.
launching and very forgiving. It's exactly what it's for. Yep.
All right, Glenn, let's see it. Ooh.
A little more fade on this
A little
one.
more fade, a little more high. I mean, it's
a
hard
lot
to
more high.
see,
Yeah,
but
you can see it going higher.
oh, finish
Almost
it
dead center of the line.
on the line.
That's pretty impressive, actually. You know, 2 degrees off the target line with a face, and yeah, it's dead on line.
And we actually had the face. This is an interesting stat. We are literally not doing this swing for swing, so the face was a little more closed than the others on that shot.
And it's still faded.
Still faded. 11 degrees launch, so we're talking a degree and a half, if not more. Than
I mean, certainly the Ping is something you might want to look at if you have trouble hitting it high enough.
High enough.
Getting it in the air.
This is my number one pick for that.
Is it? Yeah.
And a lot of guys, you know, who hit down and left, they see that little trap squirty thing.
Right.
This is gonna give them some visual of flight.
Getting the ball in the air, yeah. And obviously you're going to get more carry that way too.
Yeah.
Even though ball speed's not necessarily as high, but you're certainly going to get carry.
And this gave a little more RPMs on this Model 2. 2800 today is a little more. It's the first one that's finished right at the line, but let's not call it right at the line.
Well,
Inches.
It's inches, literally. Yeah, it's almost dead straight. Yeah.
You know, it's the highest on there. We're starting to see like a bit of a rainbow appear. The green shot, which I think was the second one that we tested, the Callaway, is lost in the mix there, but Wilson being the lowest so far and Ping being the highest. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Next on the list is going to be the SRIXON ZXI.
That's a different one. I don't know much about this
Me
one.
neither.
So,
it's not something we carry in our matrix, but I'm interested to see what it does. So, I mean, I'd say we don't know much about this. We know a lot about it because we've robot tested it. But in terms of playing the products, we haven't done it.
Yep.
So let's see. From our numbers, it was the most right bias by a tiny, tiny amount compared to the Ping was the next closest to it. So maybe something like the Ping. Sounds pretty good. All right, so this is actually telling us that our neutral robot testing gives us some feedback for this golf shot.
Yeah, it does actually, because it was a little right of the other ones, and it was a little right biased in the neutral test as well, right?
And the spin was like kind of in a similar range to the Cobra, and we saw in this table here 2,900 there. The Cobra was at 27, so not a million miles away. Launch is okay. The CG obviously is playing a part in launch because the CG and the Ping and the SRIXON are pretty close.
I have to look into why off center it kind of almost shows up more, right?
Right. Yeah, it's
or
true.
Not a square hit anyway.
Yeah. So this is the grey line. It is right up there with the Ping. It launched a tiny bit lower, spun about the same. So if you're looking for launch, with this
again, this is a higher launching one, right?
This is right in the mix.
Getting in the air. It's a pretty good driver. As long as you're looking for launch and don't fade it too much.
All right, next up is the Taylormade QI35.
Yep. I like the look of this one, to be honest with you. It just looks techy.
It's a pretty driver.
Yeah.
So QI35, we've got one of the deeper CGs, not quite as far back as a Ping, very similar to the SRIXON. One of the high YY MOIs, 5400.
That'll be interesting. That'll help.
Yeah, and we saw this really neutral on the 0-0 test in terms of left to right bias.
Right. Yep. Almost none. I like the fact it's on the left. This is one I'm looking to try.
Yeah,
so it doesn't want to go right too much. That's good.
That's a solid test right there. Nice. Let's have a look at the
Treated
table.
Closed. Yeah.
Okay, last one on the list there, 2600. So in the middle for spin, not as low as the Wilson. Really impressive that Wilson for spin. Crazy low spin. Interesting.
This is your core driver, right? It's not
Right,
LS
that's
driver,
not even the
right?
LS. Their LS was one of the lowest spinning drivers as well.
Is it?
Yeah, and it's the green, the limey green one that's showing up. So it's in the middle of the pack and running out a bit longer, obviously, because you get that launch and spin, it's going to tumble.
Yeah, relatively high launch and not that much spin, so.
Okay, so we're starting to see a pattern here. If you do need that little bit of flight, the SRIXON and the Ping are kind of standing out.
Definitely launch it a little higher.
If you do want to get the ball coming back, if you're really pulling across it and you want the fade, you're playing that, then you're going to be looking more into those Cobra and SRIXON. And then the Callaway and the Taylormade look kind of pretty neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, last but not least, Titleist GT2. Last in the alphabet. We got a mid to low YY MOI because the CG's further forward.
Right.
This is one of our lower launching, higher spinning heads.
See?
Let's do it. Yep. Actually, it was one of the more left biased ones in the neutral test too, -4 degrees. Well, definitely looked a little lower launching.
Yeah. Just slightly left the target. I mean, a foot or two. My roll.
It's on the
line. Okay.
Okay, the straightest driver from a fade is.
Yeah.
Okay, so just so you know, this is not how we conduct our test. This is one-shot testing. This is for fun.
Yeah, this is kind of for fun. So what we do in the actual test, when we pulled up all those other numbers, we hit like 10 shots and get 10 good ones. You might hit 15 or 18 and throw out anything that looks goofy.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more detailed test. This is just for fun.
Lots of fun. It was one of the lowest launching heads that we tested. It was identical to the lowest launching it and the Wilson. Spin is bang in the middle. The tilt axis was 7.4 degrees to the right on that shot. Let's go to the chart, Glenn, and see where that one lies in terms of the pack with that lovely pink colour. Down the bottom.
Right in the middle.
Yeah. Sorry, I was looking at flight in terms of height, top to bottom. Yeah, on the lower side, if not right in the centre. And it finishes right near the centre, right on the centre.
Yeah, it actually finished on the line. So,
yeah,
it's impressive.
So the long story short here is that this is not opinion based.
No.
This is data driven results. What is the best driver? Well, I think Mark...
Depends what you're looking for, right?
The Callaway for you, if you want it to stay down the left and not fade too much, looks like it was a good pick.
Yep.
Just in this
I played that driver for a while. I mean, the predecessor to it, but because it's forgiving and relatively easy to hit and easy to turn over for me.
And
Anyway.
one of the most important stats, which is we're going to bring Glen in, getting nice and close here. Glen, to borrow my microphone.
Right.
What is going to be your driver and why?
So I'm at a point where no equipment can help me anymore. So I'll just go with Taylormade because it looks cool.
Looks cool. That's going to be 90% of the people out there, by the way.
And by the way, these are all pretty good drivers. I mean, if you're looking at all these numbers, they're pretty close.
Yep.
You'd really have to dive into details. And you know, even manufacturing process, you know, one driver to another, slight changes. So these are all pretty good.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments. Is the test good? Did you enjoy the data? Did you see enough? We've seen flight, height, fade swing. We finally gave you a fade swing. Coming up, we're going to do some MOI, some high MOI 10K testing at higher speed.
That's pretty interesting.
And we'll do some forgiveness in that as well.
And it sounds like we need to do a test with a little more outside in and a little more down.
Right,
To
to
really
see some-
show what
fade.
happens at higher speed maybe.
The other one we got called out, thank you, I can't remember who did put the comment in, is for the opposite end. The guys who hit that hook that are trying not to get it to turn over quickly. So we
Right.
might have some fun with like putting some weights in the toe and higher MOI and see which ones don't
Do
turn
a real
over.
inside out, like an 8-degree inside out. You
Yeah.
know, there's a few people like that too.
Yeah. Stick around, tell us what we did in the comments. Thank you for watching.